We want to be in alignment with our lives, with our wholeness, even when everything looks horrible. As in my work with people who had survived childhood experiences that were so hard, what I learned was that if given half a chance, we want to grow, we want to thrive, we want to heal, we want to transform. The body and the psyche is always looking for opportunities to experience the wholeness that is already here. Being present was such a clear skill and competence and necessity to be with someone's heart and soul. So meditation felt like part of my life's work. It's like getting to know your mind as a neighborhood. And let's face it, sometimes our minds aren't good neighborhoods to hang out.
Getting to know this neighborhood takes courage. So we're not forcing anyone in mindfulness-based stress reduction, like, you have to look at the neighborhood. It's more like, let's see.
Yes, and the problem when we ignore things or avoid is that we
I just want to quickly thank you for beginning to watch this podcast episode. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so. Would love it if you join our community. You'll also be up to date on the latest content, and this really helps me reach out to more guests. You can also visit our website, centerformindfulness.ca. There's free events about mindfulness and laughter. Hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, and welcome everyone to today's episode. I am so honored to have a conversation with Lynn Koerbel. And before I share a little more about Lynn, her bio, I just want to mention, we just did a very short practice. And what bubbled up for me, I wanted to share this with you, Lynn, as well, is like feeling giddy. Like this feeling like a kid that they said, oh, we're going to get ice cream right now. Like, what? And Lynn, you've been such a huge influence in my life, a mentor, someone I so deeply respect and look up to. So just really a warm welcome to you. I couldn't help, I deviated from my script, but I couldn't help but to tell you this. So welcome to today's episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be covering quite a bit of topics, including exploring what inspired Lynn to gain a deep trust of the body's wisdom, the nature of resilience, the power of presence, and the inspiring human capacity to meet injury, trauma, and stress with resources that reflect the inherent wholeness in each person. For those of you who are not as familiar with her work, Lynn serves as the Assistant Director of Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, or MBSR, Teacher Training and Curricula Development at the School of Professional Studies at Brown University. She oversees the MBSR Teacher Training Pathway and Curricula. In this capacity, Lynn continues to work the work she began at the University of Massachusetts Medical School's Center for Mindfulness, or CFM, UMass CFM, where MBSR was developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn. She has been nurturing MBSR teachers in training, supporting the integrity of MBSR curriculum and best practices in teaching. Lynn spent over 25 years as integrative bodywork therapist with focus on supporting individuals who have experienced early trauma and assisting in the integration of the body in healing. How beautiful is that? She began her meditation journey in 1986, and then in 2004, this interest in reaching those who might be best served by evidence-based approaches, she began teacher training in MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. She also currently serves as the on the international committee supporting the development of training for mindfulness-based interventions, teaching assessment criteria. So this MBI TAC, long title, but it's the only evaluation and training tool for mindfulness-based teachers. Now, she also has a list of publications, so I will put those in the show notes and links to it. The contribution in MBSR teacher training are quite deep. So warm welcome to you again. to today's conversation. I wonder if we can begin back to what led you in 1986 to even want to be interested in this thing called mindfulness or meditation. What led you to your own journey, this path?
Thank you. Thank you, Kasim. And thank you. This is quite an honor for me as well. And I feel especially happy that it's you because we've known each other for so long, and it's been such a fruitful and learningful journey for me as well to know you. And this the fact that you've created this podcast is such a beautiful outpouring of your heart and your practice.
Mm.
So I'll be really honest. In 1986, I was living in Boston, and I trying to figure out landing in a new city. And I actually had a friend who was a meditator, and he told me that his teacher was coming to visit, and he asked me if I wanted to go with him. And I thought I was doing a favor for a friend.
To go with them, you mean?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, sure. For you? Yeah, I'll go. And I went back every night. That was really the beginning of something very deep and profound, and really that changed my whole life. And what I experienced that first evening was a deep longing and prayer from my I would say between the ages of like 11 and 16, when I had a very deep longing to, in my tradition, or in what I was schooled at that, to know God, was to be close to. I was raised Christian, and so Jesus was some element of my spiritual life. And I thought it was so unfair that he was here for one lifetime. And then, like, why couldn't I find someone? Why couldn't I have that experience? And I put those kind of longings aside after adolescence. And when I went to this meditation, that all came back to me. And I heard this little voice it felt like a cascade coming down over my head of like water, like this memory of these wishes and longings. And I heard this little voice that says, now is your chance. And it was, so it was really remarkable. And in some ways like, oh, finally, like, some answer. So that was what began it. And then it just became this unfolding of meditation retreats and developing a daily practice. And even though this was an exquisite experience, I would say it still took some time to develop a regular daily practice. And it gives me a whole lot of compassion for people who come to MBSR and they're like, what is this body scan? Or what is like sitting here?
40 minutes?
40 minutes?
What?
I so remember those feelings, or like my legs wouldn't work, or I'd try and sit in a particular way. And so many years later, I want to say like 92 or so, when I came to MBSR, when I found my way there or here, I delighted in the kind of the freedom and flexibility to sit in a chair if you can't sit on the floor. Not that my original path, my meditation path made you sit on the floor, but it felt so generous. And I was already, when I came to MBSR, I had already been doing body work, being a body worker and massage therapist for quite a while. And being present to me was such a clear skill and competence and necessity to be present with someone's body in that particular way and someone's heart and soul. And so meditation felt like part of my life's work because it supported me to do my work, and so I didn't feel them as separate. And yet when I came to MBSR, I could see how potent it was for people who were dealing with stress or physical injury or
Mm.
emotional trauma or any of the things that I'd been working with in my private practice of body work.
Mm. So there's so many things in what you shared that I'm so curious about. And you know, one of the things you named, so the practice so generous in mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and we'll share like what exactly is this program for people who haven't heard about it. But this um, that surprised me too, because I came more from a strict like sitting is meditating, and you only sit, and actually the more you don't move, the better you are. Like don't move. Like if there's pain, just observe it. Don't move. Don't move. You know, there's certain wisdom to being with things, but you know, my body put up with a lot of stuff that it didn't need to. You know what I mean? Like, and it surprised me in MBSR. It's like, no, if you need to stand, stand. If you need to lie down, lie down. The practice is honoring this body, not punishing it with like,
Yeah.
you know, so I really resonated when you said it's like generosity. Like it is kind. It really is kind. Yeah. So I wonder, you shared something, you know, between age 11 and 16 or so, where you had these wishes and these like prayers and wanting to find this deeper connection, something bigger in life.
Yes.
Like, and somehow it came together as you began. But what connected? There's something like, is it meaning? Is it something
Mm.
shifted? It seems. I'm curious about what, is it finding you? Is it finding, I'm wondering.
Yeah, thank you. I love the way you phrased that because as soon as you asked it, it was like, oh, I came home. I
Mm,
came home. I came to home to my own heart. And just as you were talking about the generosity of MBSR, it's that homecoming.
mm,
It's that the possibility of knowing ourselves and that's wisdom. So just as
mm,
you were talking about, you know, sitting, when we focus and we get our instruction from out here,
mhm,
we always are looking out here. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it well? Then I don't know. I don't know if it's not
mm.
not viable for me anymore.
Yeah.
It's just not. And I would say that MBSR has been such a learning about this coming home and trusting myself. And certainly as a body worker, what I learned from my clients is that the body is trustworthy. We
Mm,
can be in deep relationship with it. And there's the body is trustworthy, but there's also a wisdom that we can touch inside of ourselves, like intuition or you know, certainly the body's wisdom, but you know, those little things you get like, I should do this, or you're walking
mm.
down the street and you go, I should take a left here. And that's when you meet your life partner or,
Yeah.
you know, your new job or whatever. It doesn't
Mm,
always show up that way. But yeah, when we begin to listen to ourselves
mm,
and really operate from that response.
mm,
So that's what, for me, that's what connected when I found meditation was
mm,
coming home to myself.
mm. And it's so hard to do that in the kind of busy life, rushed life, never-ending to-dos, emails, projects, chores. It doesn't really end. But taking the time, like, what would you say to people who, they're like, I'm, sounds interesting, but
Right.
it's only like, you know, maybe when I later when I retire and I have time, or you know,
Right.
or like right now I'm too busy like living as like,
Yeah.
right. And I, so what would you say to that? I'm wondering.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, people come to the 8-week MBSR class for all kinds of reasons. One is like to just check it out. Like, well, I like my life. It's pretty good, but I'm reading all this stuff about mindfulness. Maybe this could help make it
Mm,
better. Or people come because they're they've hit snags in their lives that they didn't
mm,
anticipate things, challenges, all kinds of challenges, and want to know how to meet it or how to mitigate it. And what I often say in the orientation is, so you've got these 8 weeks. It's actually a very small amount of time out of a very busy life.
Yeah.
If you really want to get the most of this, just really focus on this in these 8 weeks. Prioritize it. You'll get a lot of data from this experience, and that's how we encourage participants to take it as a scientist. So you're collecting data, you're doing your own research, and then see for yourself. And I'll often add, if you fall in love with one practice, that's all you need. So that's my hook, actually.
Yes.
Fall in love with one practice. And somebody came to my orientation who had just finished my prior course. I sometimes will have somebody come and say, tell everybody what it was like. They don't have to just believe me, like from the horse's mouth. How was it? And she said, I started to crave my meditation practice. I started to I didn't just have to like do it as a discipline. It was like something that welcomed me, that I wanted to do. I can almost feel tears at that because I know that feeling. And it isn't what people experience right away. Sometimes it's like a grind. It's like, ugh.
Yeah.
But the good news is, what else in your life is a grind? And then in meditation, you can learn a little bit more about the grind. Oh, so what is it like when I'm resistant? And look at all the ways in your life, all the things that you resist. Here's the tightness in the belly. Here's the clenched throat. Here's the never-ending to-do list. Oh, I know this. And is it possible to let your practice be just about knowing that? So we're not trying to get to peace or harmony or tranquility. Sometimes that shows up, but it's like getting to know your mind as a neighborhood. And let's face it, sometimes our minds aren't good neighborhoods to hang out in. So when we get to know that, oh, my mind isn't such a great neighborhood, there's a natural inclination to want to clean it up. And, so people say, okay, so it's not easy hanging out with my body and the body scan, figuring out what I feel with my left big toe, but it's better than hanging out in the mind that I've got right now. Right. So let me try this and see. Yeah.
So there's something about getting to know how things are, like getting to know this neighborhood, and actually takes the courage to go, let me look, what actually is it like in this neighborhood of my mind, of my body. And initially it can be kind of scary for some, because sometimes we cope by not looking in.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, ooh, I don't want to. Avoidance has helped me a lot in life, so I don't want to look in. And then the invitation becomes just, if it's of interest, gently turning to it. So we're not forcing anyone in mindfulness-based restoration, like, you have to look at the neighborhood. It's more like, let's see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the problem, or the conundrum when we ignore things or avoid is that we can't just avoid or ignore or shut the door on the bad neighborhood. We also shut the door on all that's good. I talk about the heart as having two sides. We want the positive, we don't want the negative, but actually you have to play the entire instrument. And so if we start to shut down in one area and say, well, I don't want that, it works for a while. It can work for a while, but slowly over time, we sort of deaden ourselves to all of the other moments, the neutral ones, the subtle ones, the ones like when the sky just starts to glow with the rising sun.
Mm,
And so, as you're saying, there's no forcing. But when we feel stable inside, which is what mindfulness can help us
mm,
do, we can begin to slowly and with a lot of kindness and generosity
mm,
can begin to open the door to these places that, we all have closets or junk drawers that we'd rather not open. But when we have the energy to really clean it out or to look at it and sort through, it's not as big or as ominous as we often,
mm,
you know, face into it with. Sometimes
mm,
our fears in the mind are actually greater than what we find, not always, but often the anticipation of going into those places can be a lot more challenging than actually doing it.
mm. Does when you're describing it, it feels like that's healing because we cannot undo whatever is in that room, so to speak, or whatever has happened in the past. We can't cure the past, but how can we or fix the past? But so is that part of healing as you're describing? Like, is it coming to terms or
I like that.
what is heal? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, yeah. This is actually Jon Kabat-Zinn's quote, right? That healing is in mindfulness, coming to terms with things as they are.
Mm,
And my dear friend and colleague Becca Crane, who was the director of the Center for Research and Practice, Center for Mindfulness Research and Practice at Bangor University,
mm,
um, she has likened MBSR and other MBPs as exposure therapy. So if you think about when you were small and maybe you had fear of monsters in the closet,
mm,
if you had wise parents, they sort of would turn on the light, open the door, show you, and you could get used to the fact that, oh, there aren't real monsters there, but I've created some in my mind. And as we become familiar with the ways that our bodies and our minds and our emotions react, it becomes less scary. It's like, oh, the tightness in my belly, I don't have to be afraid of it. I know that if I'm getting ready to have a hard conversation with someone, that's the sign that says I should probably breathe and pause. So we can get to know the signals that allow us to make wise choice. So
mm,
these are skills that we can learn that allow us to get used to the neighborhoods. Know when, well, I want to be well resourced when I go there. I want to have good sleep, good nutrition.
mm,
Feel strong when I go into those places.
mm. Uh, I guess this puts a bit of brakes on the impulse of autopilot. Like if we're wanting to have a conversation with someone, it's a difficult conversation. There might be a sense of like, I want to get it over with quickly now, which maybe like I'm thinking maybe now is not the best time as an example. So feels a bit of like um, pausing, like there's a bit of a and it doesn't mean we have to take long pauses for like, but it could be a split second. And is that what you see in terms of mindfulness-based stress reduction? Is people's capacity, like what? And maybe we should define what MBSR is. For those, most of the listeners will likely know, but some go, "What is this thing again?" Like it's an
Yeah.
8-week program, but what is that? Can you say a little bit about maybe? And then we'll go to the autopilot.
Sure, sure. So this was a program that was created by Jon Kabat-Zinn in 1979 at UMass Medical Center. And he was a longtime meditator and yoga practitioner and molecular molecular biologist by
Mm,
trade. And he was on a 10-day retreat at a meditation center, and he writes about this. He's written about the experience that he suddenly felt like, why aren't these practices available? He had gotten so much from them. Why aren't these practices available to people who would never step into a meditation hall, who would never think of taking time from their very busy lives, not even be able to go on a 10-day retreat? And in that moment, he had a bit of a flash of this possibility. And after that retreat, he went back to UMass where he was working, and he asked doctors to send him the people who they weren't able to help for this pilot program that he kind of threw together. I mean, that's not what he did, but it happened all very quickly.
Yeah.
And of course, the physicians sent him people who were in pain, people with chronic conditions, and pretty quickly there was good evidence that by participating in these practices, he calls it participatory medicine.
Yeah.
It's not alternative, but drawing forth resources inside. And it wasn't that everybody suddenly got better, and it wasn't that, I mean, I think, I'm not sure about then, but I know now, I mean, people's medication needs change.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of their condition can change. But what he really found was that people changed their relationship with their condition. They felt better able to manage and work with it. And it became less of an enemy.
Yeah.
So that's so MBSR is this 8-week program with the essence is still pretty much what it was back then. The elements that we talk about, the practices that we do. And a big focus is on this automatic habitual stress reactivity, the flare of the body, the way the nervous system reacts without thinking, because that's what keeps us alive. You know, if we step out into traffic and a car blows a horn, we jump back. We don't think about it. We don't look around to
observe the sound. It's like, get out.
Right, get out of the way, bucko. And then so how do we work with that? If it's automatic, how do we approach it? But this pausing, and like you're saying, it doesn't have to be a big pause, although what we find is that formal practice, the longer formal meditation practices, sort of set the stage. They're like money in the bank. They begin to open the doorway. Oh, I could do this. I could do this as I walk from my car to the office in the morning. Just while I'm walking with my eyes open, I can be fully present in each step. So that's a way to actually pause. Or in the midst, when your colleague comes to you and says, I need to talk with you right away. And you know what it's about, and you know it's not good. And in that moment, is it possible to pause and look them in the eye and say, could we take a rain check? Or this isn't, I really want to talk with you as well. And this isn't the best time, which would give you a little bit of time to kind of collect yourself. So these pauses are not a small thing, and they can take a lot of courage, but little by little, we can begin to learn new behaviors. I have a cartoon on my first class home assignment sheet with 2 hamsters, the wheel.
Yes.
One's going around and the other hamster is sitting on his wheel. Everything's stopped on his wheel. And he says, I've had an epiphany. And I say, if you find yourself in an MBSR classroom, it's because you've had an epiphany. Even if you can't get off the hamster wheel yet, you know that there's more. You know there's more to life. You know there's more to life than the bad neighborhood or the hamster wheel or the to-do list. And that calling, that can't actually be ignored.
Yeah. So it's deeply embedded in actually how we're living our life. And I think sometimes the misconception is It's just something we do, just meditate and then get back to being
Yes.
rushed and busy and stressed, and nothing changes. But it's a laboratory that the practice is to get to know the body, get to know the mind, and then let it spill over to like
Right.
what happens when I'm like a moment like this happened to me 2 weeks ago. Just doing dishes, in the middle of doing dishes, I had like five thoughts that just traffic jam in my head, and all five thoughts were like, "Oh, I got to do this report. I didn't do this part," and I could feel my heart start beating faster. And then there's a moment I'm like, "Wait a minute, I don't have to take care of this right now. Thank you, mind. I know you're trying to help me. I have to submit this report. Yes, but there's dishes in front of me. Like I had to like, it's almost like a child that's kind of talk too nicely to lovingly, like I get it, I get it, that's what's happening, but hold on. And that helps so much from escalating,
Right.
like spinning me for like hours. Like I caught it as it was happening, like, oh,
Mm. Yeah.
like my body's the signals in the body, that's the tuning in, like, oh, why is my heart going faster now?
I'm just washing the dishes.
Why is
What's
this dish? Well, it's not the soap, but like what's going on here?
Cass, some of the sweetest moments in MBSR classes are when people come in and they feel like nothing's happening, like they're doing these practices, they're doing them very consistently, and they don't feel like anything big is happening. And
Mm,
then maybe around week 3 or 4, somebody will come in and they'll say, I don't think anything's happening, but my 4-year-old has told me that I'm different.
mm,
Or a colleague has stopped me and said, you seem so calm. What are you
mm,
doing? And again, I can feel teary because we don't know, we can't always tell inside. And yet it can impact how we relate to the people who we're closest to, who we care about the most. And that often will help people keep going.
yeah. This is so beautifully said because sometimes we hang on to a certain outcome. I'm doing mindfulness-based stress reduction. I want to get here and I'm not there. But it's like we don't know. Like you said, others can notice what's happening. And often, I mean, I'll be honest with me, when I started, what kept me going, being a very kind of heady guy, I want the research, show me the proof. And like, even when I started, like the decades of research on MBSR, I felt like, wow, like this is evidence based. This is not just like, let's hope this works. Um, we know it works, but now let's let go of a research and
Mm-hmm.
research your life. And sometimes people get like, tell me more research in the program. Like, well, we can do that later. Let's get to know you here. Yeah.
And that's one of the hallmarks of MBSR. It's very experiential, as you're saying. We do sprinkle a little research in there,
Yes.
but there's something about that kind of learning
Mm.
instead of the reading kind of learning, the cognitive, that for many people is such a return to the kind of childhood wonder and curiosity. And, I'm it puts new meaning for me in lifelong learning. Like
Mm.
human beings are learning creatures.
Yes.
And I don't know a better learning trajectory than mindfulness, frankly.
Mm. Yeah. The Jon Kabat-Zinn uses this like the adventure. Like when I
Yeah.
first heard it, I'm like, huh, what does he mean adventure? Like I'm annoyed, I'm restless. I'm
Or
like,
the love affair. Or the
love
love
affair, yeah,
affair.
love
I'm
affair.
going to
I'm
have a
like,
love affair with my restlessness.
my
Are you
pain
kidding me?
and for me it was like stomach problem issues, it was colitis, IBS. I didn't know what it was, and I'm like, I actually had this relation with my body. Like I hated it. I hate why you're doing like
Right.
body, you are failing me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a very gentle, kind being with the body. It was like, I can't trust you, body. You're failing me,
Yeah.
right? So I guess what, from your years of teaching and ongoing teaching and teacher training, like what would you say to someone who experiences that? Like, how
Mm,
can I trust when my mind gives me this really painful thoughts I don't want? My body gives me this painful, like, how can I trust my
yeah.
mind and my body when it's kind of failing me?
Yeah. So I have these kinds of conversations all the time because so often people do come to MBSR because they feel their body has betrayed them in some way.
Mm,
Um, and that or the only messages they get are pain.
mm,
Chronic pain is a one of the many conditions that often shows up in the MBSR classroom. And so this is where a tremendous amount of gentleness and permission to stop practicing, permission to let the emotions flow. There's that famous scene in Bill Moyer's special Healing in the Mind with Jon Kabat-Zinn. And you see John going up to somebody and wiping their tear away. He
mm,
was right with them. He was whispering in her ear. How many of us don't give ourselves permission to cry? And
mm,
sometimes I say in class when somebody says, oh, they're apologizing for crying. And I said, it's worth crying over. What's been trapped in the body, the sensations, the emotions, just the freedom to actually feel it
yeah.
without pushing it away. And this is very counter.
Mm,
It's not an obvious thing. But again, to this point of we want essentially and deep down, we want the truth. We
mm,
want to be in alignment with our lives, with our hearts, with our good intentions, with our wholeness, which is always here, even when everything looks horrible. So that's actually an important ethos of MBSR, and it's one that I resonated with because in my work with people who had survived childhood experiences that were so hard
mm,
in my bodywork practice, what I learned from them was that if given half a chance, we want to grow, we want to thrive, we want to heal, we want to transform, and the body and the psyche is always looking for opportunities to experience the wholeness that is already here. So when I came to MBSR, I felt like I understood that. I understood the perspective of wholeness, even when we feel terrible.
this description of wholeness, it's not waiting until something's resolved or the pain is gone or I've come to terms with traumas from the past, hurt, loss, or whatever it is. It's not when that's over, then I'm whole. And that's really powerful. It's like we can be whole and complete with all of it. Like
Yes.
honoring this deep hurt and suffering and the joy, and we're whole as is. Even if there's missing parts in the body, we're still whole and complete.
Exactly. And people in our minds, we think that's impossible.
Mm,
But when people begin to practice, they discover that there is, a very deep and, a pain or something very challenging. And then right next to it, like maybe in the next moment, there's laughter,
mm,
or you hear your child's voice and you smile. And it's like, whoa, what just happened? I
mm,
went from here to here. My whole day was not just, it was a terrible day. And so people start to wake up to the experiences that are so easy to push away if there's pain, if there's challenge. It's like, oh no, I can't let that good thing in because it's going to change. But that's the other thing we come to grips with is that everything is changing.
mm. And that's a reality that's hard to digest at first. Like, oh, but can we keep the good stuff and just get rid of the bad stuff?
Right. So that's those two doors of the heart,
Yeah.
That's like, right. And but as you're saying, it takes time.
Mm.
It takes time for us to build up our strength to touch the hard parts. And it takes time to learn to tolerate the good stuff. Sometimes
Mm.
that becomes an interesting practice, like practicing kindness with ourselves. For
Mm.
some, that's the hardest piece.
Yeah.
I don't deserve to have that kind of
Mm.
kindness. I can treat all the people in my life like that, but not myself.
Oh.
So that's a big one for a lot of people.
Mm. Somehow, for many, it's easier to be kind externally,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
extend that internally to ourselves. Like
Yeah.
the inner critic can really flare up, like big time. And so there's something about working with those thoughts and mindfulness and MBSR, working with not about getting rid of. I gotta eliminate. So these things, I'll never hear that thought ever again. It's more like when it comes up, I can work with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really good research, and I can't cite it right.
Mm.
Maybe you can. That when you practice mindfulness, you actually your reactions, the kind of amplitude of how you respond, could actually be greater than before. However, you recover more quickly. And so that in going back to the musical instrument metaphor, it's like you can have a practice piano which has a couple of octaves in it. And then with practicing mindfulness, you get the grand piano.
Yeah.
You get all of it, right? You get all of the sounds. And so, yes, there might be deep grief and
Mm.
also deep joy and contentment.
Mm.
Um, and more recovery, more ability to bounce back or to be creative in how you meet these challenges. So that's some of the research that I feel is really important and helps people keep practicing.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps supporting the ongoing development as well in the field. And I have so many curiosity, and I'm aware. I knew this is going to be such a deeply enjoyable conversation that kind of flows so quickly, and I literally feel like I need at least like 2 more hours. But I'm aware of a time, and maybe we can have a second go in the future, because I'm interested in like teacher training, like a little more as well about what it was like for you in the early days at
I'd love that.
UMass,
I'd love
uh,
that.
retreats. So maybe we can have that in the future. And um, would it be okay in the minutes we have left to guide listeners through a short practice, couple of minute practice? Would that be
Yes, I'd be happy
yes?
to do that, Kasim. Thank you for asking. Yeah, let me if we I don't have my phone here, but will you you'll do you have a bell?
I do, but I don't think it picks up the. Let
Okay.
me. Yes.
That's okay. I don't need a bell. Let's
Just we'll
yeah.
do the ding voice bell.
Yeah, so let's the mind might be very stimulated by all
Mm.
this exploration, or maybe the heart, and maybe there's just a lot of energy, like that giddy. We get to have ice cream now. I love that. So wherever you're listening from, just take a moment and pause. If you're able to sit down, or if it's more comfortable to stand,
Mm.
and look around the space you're in. I have an image that some of you might be listening to this with your ear pods in an outdoor environment along the mountains or on a wooded path. Just pause and look around. Take in your surroundings. Let all your senses come alive, what you can hear, see, smell, even taste. There might be a kind of flavor to the air. And then allowing the eyes to gently close or lower, if that feels comfortable and easy. And coming into the interior and just feeling this body sitting, standing, grounded, connected to the earth. And feeling how the body takes up space from the soles of the feet all the way up to the crown of the head, from the back to the front, and from the sides, from one side to the other. And then from the deepest core of the body all the way out to the skin, and then just a little beyond. There's a familiar meditation instruction that says, taking one's seat. And it can be a really powerful practice to wherever we are, in whatever position we're in, to take our seat in our life, in alignment with our values, our heart. And even if this whole time the mind has been a very busy place, it's okay, because you know it. Nothing to push away. It's like this right now. We could stay here. I could stay here for a lot longer, but I'm aware that probably many of you need to move along. So just opening the eyes gently, looking around your space again. You might notice some different things, different textures. Thank you. It was lovely to practice.
Oh, talk about hanging on to pleasant and joy. Now I was like, oh no. I don't understand. It's so interesting. Like even I have windows where I'm looking out here, and it's like the windows feel more still. I mean, they're still the same windows, but it's like, oh, I can see them even in a couple of minutes a little more clearly. They're here.
But what's the only thing that's changed?
Yeah.
You.
Right here. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for this beautiful guidance, for your incredible contribution ongoing to the field for so many people. And I really feel like we're just barely scratched the surface. So would love to have you back, share more conversations. And I'll put the links to where people can find you at Brown. And if anyone is interested in mindfulness-based stress reduction, you have information session at Brown as well. And we also have them at our Center for Mindfulness Canada, free information session. So wherever you feel pulled or the timing works better, then reach out wherever it is for MBSR if you're curious. And I want to thank you again, Lynn. And I already look forward to the next time we connect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joy.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the listeners again for listening. And if you watch on YouTube, for watching. May your moments be filled with ease, and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you.